Hi, welcome to this short course on effective chairing at BAUS meetings. My name's Ian Pearce, my colleague.
I'm Joe Phillip. Hi.
So we're going to spend the next 20 minutes or so just taking you through a few pointers on chairing at any BAUS meeting throughout the calendar year. This was a course originally set up by Mark Speakman and Tim O'Brien, to whom we are very grateful, particularly for some of the slides that we're also using today. So essentially what we're trying to do is cover any of the sessions that may be delivered at any of the BAUS meetings throughout the year, whether they're plenary or subplenary sessions, whether they're sessions, poster sessions, courses, anything that will be delivered, we hope that we'll be able to cover today. And you can just see on the right of the screen just an example of a screenshot which is actually for one of the annual meetings in the summer. So there's a lot to cover and hopefully we'll be able to get through everything in the next 20 minutes or so. So the aims really are threefold. The preparation, particularly on the day and prior to the day. We're going to talk about chairing the actual session, what we expect from chairs, what a chair should and should not do. And then also look at after the event, what's the after party like? In other words, how are we going to go about collecting feedback to make sure that the courses and the sessions and the meetings that we run are enhanced year on year. So in terms of preparation prior to the event, this is one of the key roles of the chair. And what we would expect and what we would advocate is that the chairs do make contact with everybody who is participating in the session, whether that is the speaker, the co-chair, or indeed the social media team who will be responsible for getting the content of the session out. So make contact well in advance. Make sure they know what is expected from them. Make sure they know who else is speaking, what topic, what time frame they have, and really stress to them the need to ensure that they read the AV instructions that get dished out and sent around to all the speakers in advance of the day. Please do also make sure that speakers and the social media team know exactly where they're going, particularly things like the annual meeting and the oncology meeting and endourology meeting. There may be more than one session running in parallel, so it's easy for people to get confused and turn up at the wrong venue. So make sure people know exactly which room they're going to and at exactly what time, and stress to them the importance of trying to be early. It is important to know, particularly for the colleagues who are speaking in your session, how their name is pronounced. If you're not sure, please do ask them. Nobody will be offended by that. It's far better to ask them to get things wrong. And also make sure you know what their appropriate professional title is. Also, running up to the event, please do consider highlighting your session on any social media platform that you may be familiar with and using. There are a couple of pitfalls that we'd like to try and prevent on the day, of course. The biggest one is overrunning. If you allow a session to overrun, the knock-on effect carries on all the way through the day and everybody's session is put out of kilter. So please be very clear about the time frame. Try and avoid any duplication, and again, this is all about contacting the speakers and making sure they know what they're speaking on, what not to edge over into. Try and ask them not to give a prolonged preamble. Nobody needs 5 minutes on the basics of bladder cancer or prostate cancer. Tell them to get to the crux of what they wish to deliver and what you wish them to deliver, so that the audience has plenty of time for that rather than the information they already know. Please do be aware of question vacuums. It's very easy at the end of a session to suddenly have silence. And often what the audience needs is just somebody to ask the first question. So do prepare a question in advance just to make sure that you can step in should the need occur. Behaviours and language that we use is incredibly important, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that shortly, but do please be conscious of the language and the behaviour pattern that you set, and be prepared to call out colleagues who may be inappropriately behaving. The solutions we've talked about: stressing the punctuality, stressing how much time the speakers have, making sure you highlight what is acceptable, what is good and acceptable practice and what is not. So, for example, try and say good morning colleagues and friends rather than good morning guys. Okay, so we need to be making sure we utilise inclusive language all the time. The BAUS Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Statement is on the next slide, and I'm going to take a bit of time to just read that out for those colleagues that are on the move. And I think we've already talked about the rest of the things that are on this slide. So this is a rather busy slide. This is the BAUS Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Statement. As an association, we understand that equality, diversity and inclusion are very important as we strive for excellence. Our members come from every walk of life, and therefore to adequately represent them, we also should come from all walks of life. The association recognises that inclusion is about the choices we make, the words we use and the actions that we take every day. It's essential that our members are respectful and open to ideas, perspectives and outlooks that may be different from their own. And the association expects that all members will uphold this ethos in their interactions with patients and colleagues alike. And this is the bit that's particularly pertinent to all of the meetings and the education events that BAUS holds throughout the year. BAUS is well aware of the true benefits that equality, diversity and inclusion will bring. We recognise its positive effect on innovation, on quality of care and on the well-being of the workforce. As such, the association will ensure equality is at the core of its future work. We will look to the positive impact that equality and diversity and inclusion will have in education, research and clinical excellence. Joe.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. Now, on the day, what should we do? So check out the location. Please arrive early. Identify the session IT support. What you don't want is the microphone not working or the pointers not in place, and aim to start on time, please. Set the scene, order of proceedings. You've already discussed with the speakers what the time remit is. And what about questions? Have a question or two ready for each speaker. Sometimes the audience may have a bit of a lag to get up, to find the roving microphones, and also try to limit to one person, one question from the audience. What you don't want is somebody having a discussion with the speakers and not giving others a chance. Remember about introductions, to be quite succinct and to close on time. The ASCO statement about evaluating unconscious bias. It's very important that we accept and appreciate that this could be a problem. Female speakers are less likely to be addressed by their professional title. Going back to what Ian said about asking how speakers would like to be addressed or what their names are pronounced as, it's important to ask these things and also to address them appropriately. It's the job of the chair to ensure a prompt start and finish. You would have already emailed the speakers, maybe spoken to them, they know how much time they have. And also, please don't forget to take into account inter-speaker delays. It may be an idea to have a discussion with each speaker beforehand about how you will warn them for the last minute and then move on to the next speaker. Again, to remind, pronunciation of the names, the uniformity of titles. What type of speakers are they? Do they prefer to be on the lectern, or would they like to move around? Would they like a handheld or a static microphone? And do they need pointers or not? It's worthwhile asking all these questions ahead of the time so that you can have a smooth session. And also ensure the IT expert explains the required functions, because we may not be all aware of how things work. What about patients? We are blessed that some of our patients have agreed to come and join us. Remember, this may be very alien to them, and some may have quite significant concerns about how an audience of urologists might perceive them. So try to break the ice, ask them how they like to be addressed. Are they happy to field questions? Not everybody may be comfortable with that. Remember and remind the audience that the patient is a person, not a diagnosis. Agree a plan, especially if there's high emotions. Myself and Ian will be around for most meetings, and you will have the organizational committees for most meetings who should be able to help you out if there's any issues. And also liaise post-session with the speakers to ensure that all is well. For you, the chairs, decide on division of labor. Engage and enthuse and smile and be complimentary, not only to the speakers and the audience, but also to each other. Encourage the delegates to come from the front so that we don't have the empty chairs in the front and lots of people standing in the back. and encourage discussions and questions. And don't forget, thank the speakers, the audience, and also the social media team who will be there plugging away, giving you the publicity and encouraging the speakers' information to be widely spread. You're there to make the participants look good and make BAUS a great session. Right, at the end, with regards to the questions, let me pass on to Ian. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks. So the questions, it's important to start by figuring out when do you want the questions to happen? Does the session lend itself to the questions at the end of every speaker, or as the speaker goes, or right at the very end when the audience can listen to the whole session first? So just think about that in advance, perhaps discuss it with the speakers, and then decide on a plan so that everybody is clear as to what's going on. There are a couple of things to be aware of when you are chairing in terms of who asks the first question and under what circumstance. It's been shown that men are significantly more likely to ask questions at scientific medical conferences unless the first question comes from a woman. So you may wish to consider, if you have a choice of people in the audience asking a question, by selecting a particular person to deliver the first question, that may open up to a much more inclusive debate and discussion. It's also true to say that women are most likely to ask the first question of a female speaker. And again, it's worth just keeping that in mind in order to try and promote the best debate that we can get from each session. So if possible, as chair, try and negate any potential bias. And whilst this has been shown, it wouldn't be a huge leap of faith to think that exactly the same might apply to a trainee. In other words, a trainee is most likely to ask a question of a trainee presenter. Or perhaps a trainee is more likely to ask a question if the first question was asked by a trainee. So try and make all of the audience feel comfortable enough that they could ask a question, and that way we will get more out of every session. In terms of the question, we've talked about having backup questions to make sure there isn't any awkward gaps. But one of the keys to that is to make sure that as the chair, your question is sacrificed if there is a question from the audience. Okay? Your role as chair is to facilitate the session. So yes, have it as a backup, but no more than that. Try and make sure that you know where the roving microphones are, particularly if the room that you're chairing in is particularly big. Particularly also because lots of the sessions now for various meetings that we have at BAUS will be recorded. They'll be available, of course, throughout the year, but equally maybe being live streamed. So beware of where the roving microphones are. Stress the importance to the audience that if they are going to ask a question, they must wait for that microphone. Ask them to stand up, make sure they introduce themselves. Not everybody in the audience will know who they are. This is a nice quote on the top here, is that the first sentence should be the question. And there shouldn't be a second question, a second sentence. In other words, try and move away from this idea that the member in the audience asking the question wants to tell you about his or her practice for the first 5 minutes, followed then by a single question. Try and keep them succinct so we get more and more out of the audience. The other pitfalls that could occasionally come up is that, particularly again if you're in a large room, it might be difficult for everybody to absolutely hear what the question is. And if that is the case, then as chair, your role would be to perhaps repeat the question to make sure it's clear to everybody. Equally, we're conscious that BAUS activities include people from all over the world, and there may be occasional episodes where the question may pose some level of language difficulty for the speaker. And again, as chair, you might wish to either simplify that or perhaps even help in answering the question. I'm grateful to Tim O'Brien and Mark Speakman for this slide, which again shows a variety of different avenues down which the chairs can go in order to create backup questions. So it's worthwhile just looking at whether this is going to be about analysis, maybe evaluation, maybe knowledge. These are just helpful pointers for developing your backup question. I'll just hand over to Joe for the social media aspect.
Thank you, Ian. Social media. You will have at least 2 colleagues who will be doing the social media posting. Make contact before, ideally, and on the day. Ensure the speakers are agreeable to having social media publicity. Agree a joint plan. The speakers could give you take-home messages, maybe questions, maybe a summary. Let the audience know the session will feature on social media. Name and thank the social media posting colleagues. it's a good thing to do. Liaise after the event to ensure planned delivery. Now, to the poster sessions. It is useful to read all the posters prior to the session. Some sessions have a huge number of posters, some not that many. You may need some background reading, especially if the area of expertise is, the poster is not within your area of expertise. Liaise with your co-chair, divide the labor, plans questions, and at the end of the day, at the end of the session, please decide on the best poster and email Harry so that he can get the certificate out to the successful person. Contact the presenters if you have to, and ideally, discussion about what exactly is their message. Some of it may not be so succinct. A take-home message from every poster. What does this add? Does it add to urological literature? Does it help clinical practice? Something that, as chair, you could summarize. Remember, discussion is key, and it's a two-way traffic. There would be lots of people in the room who would be quite keen to know how things develop from each poster. There's a lot of work that has happened, and it is important that we share our knowledge and expertise. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Joe. In terms of the guest lectures, again, it's really vital to make contact with the guest lecturer beforehand. Prepare your introduction well in advance and make sure that that is a two-way street to make sure that you have delivered an introduction that the guest lecturer is happy with. You may wish to ask for their slides in advance to make sure that there are either too many or perhaps too few slides. The issue probably won't be too few, it'll almost certainly, if anything, be too many slides, so just make sure that the number of slides correlates correctly with the timing. And then again, for questions, don't forget to have a pre-planned question. And actually for the guest lectures, it's not uncommon for the lecturer to actually suggest a question, which again, you can then use to get the discussion flowing. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Ian. Coming to courses, thank you to all of you who have agreed to chair the courses, the course organizers, both the skills courses and the virtual hybrid teaching courses. Remember, as a chair, your role is to deliver as advertised. So know your audience, the venue, the timings and the speakers, the equipment that needs to be, especially for the skills course. I know it is important that you have all the equipment that you need, so try to get in early to make sure it's all in place. Maybe a bit of pre-reading, and also afterwards the post-event information. Is there any leaflets, any documents that you can give the participants? And also encourage feedback. It is always useful to get feedback from the trainees, for the participants, for both constructive and otherwise. What about post-event? BAUS will seek feedback. That's how we improve. It'll thank guest speakers. But the events team also would like your feedback. Both myself and Ian, Harry and colleagues, we would like to know what your experience was. What would you change? What would you improve? What are you not keen on? And also, more importantly, are you keen to be involved for the next conference and moving forward? In summary, let's prepare in advance, set the scenes, speak to the speakers, be prepared, remember about appropriate language and behavior. Sometimes people in the heat of the moment may say things they regret. It is always the bigger person who apologizes. Be punctual and please enjoy participating. But more importantly, thank you for your expertise and contribution. Thank you.
Thanks very much.